Welcome to the Queens of Moxie. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, the host of this program, and I'm so excited that you've decided to join us today. Every week, we bring amazing women to our podcast to talk about how they have stepped into joy and reclaimed their moxie and are living their authentic life. I want to get started, but before we do, I want to remind you to subscribe to the weekly email. Simply go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. That way, every Monday morning, you'll get a link to the latest podcast, a beautiful image, and a fabulous quote. It's a great way to start out your week. So let's get started with today's podcast. Here today at Queens of Moxie with Pamela Johnson. Oh my gosh, y'all. I am so excited to talk with her. And I met her 6 years ago or more when I had this amazing serendipitous opportunity to go to Italy. I literally got laid off through a merger and went to Italy in 2 weeks later. And the only thing I had planned was a cooking class with Pamela. And I enjoyed it so much. And she made such an impression on me that when I started my podcast, I knew that I wanted to interview her about her adventures and all the things that she's done. And so I want to give you just a little bit of background about her, and then we're going to go right into what she's doing now and the life changes that she made to really step into her joy. So she grew up in California, and she went to college and then went to graduate work, and found out that she has been exposed to all kinds of different religions and denominations. And that really, I think, probably influenced some of her life and her openness and willingness to accept and understand things on a different level. And I love the fact that she says that her church is nature and kindness is her philosophy. And I love those ideas. So she was in California until she moved to Italy. And I just love the fact that people have this adventurous spirit and go and follow their dreams. And she is a famous cook. She has written, I don't know how many cookbooks. We're going to get into that. And having this career in cooking really is part of what led her to Italy. And she originally started her career as a special education teacher. And what happened was she was using cooking and training really workforce kind of skills to her special ed students who were 14 to 21, and just loved the food aspect. And so decided to really make it a full-time thing, even though she loved teaching, going into working in a kitchen and catering, and then opening her own school, and just really immersing herself in that. She is married to Johnny Johns, which I think is just the best name ever. They've been married since '86. And what I think is awesome is that she met him at his brother's wedding because his brother married her best friend in college. And I think, wow, you want to talk about serendipity. That's just amazing. So Pamela, I am so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. She is in Italy. I am in Charlottesville, Virginia. And through the magic of technology, we're able to talk today. So thank you for being here.
Well, happy to see you again. It's been a while. Anyway, I'm just wondering if you remember what we cooked in our cooking class.
There were several things. I love the fact that you had these tomatoes that you had gotten the seeds from, not the kind of tomatoes that we have here in the US. So they were more robust and flavorful, and they were so good. And so we made a marinara with that. We made pasta. We made several kinds of pasta.
Did we roll it out by hand and make the local pasta?
We did, but we also did ravioli.
Mm-hmm.
So we did both. And I think probably the most impressive thing, and the thing I take with me a lot, is that we made the zucchini blossoms.
Oh yeah, those are so good.
Dip
them in a batter and into olive oil to cook them.
Yes. Yes. And you made an olive oil cake. I remember that too, or we did, I should say. There was a lot more than that, but those were the things that I still remember. And I talk about the blossoms all the time with people. I'm like, we need to make these. I have to say, I haven't been adventuresome to try them. I don't know why. Probably because I don't have a garden. Actually, I guess that's why. But and I have your
I'm
cookbook.
really impressed that you remembered all that.
Well, you were impressive, and the work that we did, and I say work, it wasn't work. The enjoyment that we shared, and the community that we shared was just fabulous. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a family there, and they had it was a husband and wife and two boys, and I got to work with the boys.
Oh, cute. I don't remember them, but I do remember you. But one of the things that and that you touched on was tomatoes. I mean, what it's so important. None of the things that we did in that class are very difficult or techniques that you couldn't do at home. But the difference in the way the food tastes is because of our ingredients. And there's no GMO here in Europe. And they're trying their hardest to get in. But it makes such a difference in the flavor of the foods. You don't have to add a lot of cheese and cream and all of these things, and especially garlic. Every time I go to the States, people are just putting garlic in everything. Nothing against garlic, it's just, but that's all you taste.
Yeah.
Ingredients are so important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I recently got a test kitchen Mediterranean cookbook, and I've been making lots of recipes from it. I've heard over and over again that that's the healthiest way to eat. And every single recipe that I've tried is amazing. And all of them require lots of fresh herbs and seasoning. And you don't need the sodium and all of the other things. I mean, they're just wonderful the way they are.
The herbs bring the flavors out rather than covering it.
Exactly.
And but I think the best suggestion maybe for cooking and getting flavor is to use organic products that haven't been GMO'd.
Well, I know more about your background, but our listeners here don't. So, if I tried to share it, I probably would mess it up. So, I want to talk to you about, you moved from special education and teaching these life skills so that these young adults could be employable and could learn something that they can actually do something with. And then you moved into working in a kitchen and then catering and then your own school. And throughout this process, if I remember correctly, you would take people on tours to different places and teach them the cooking of those different regions. Can you talk about that?
Well, I'd love to talk about that. In fact, I just got back from a 3-week back to back. Each week was in a different region trip with people. It is amazing when you think about it. Here in Italy, we have 20 regions.
Mhm.
And it's only been united a little over 150 years. And so these regions have really maintained their identities, even the way people speak, the way they look, how they act, the ingredients that are grown there. Because think about Italy, how from north to south, it's very long.
Mhm.
And you have the toe of the boot in Sicily that's almost to North Africa, right?
Yeah.
And then all the way up to the top where you're touching the Alps. And so different plants and things grow there. And people didn't have communication with each other up until maybe 50 years ago. We're still catching up with all
Wow.
of the modernization. And so food would grow up in an area based on the ingredients that they had and what people were making. And a great example is the pasta that you and I made together. It's
Mhm.
called Pici, Pici, and you really, in a traditional sense, only find it here in southern Tuscany.
Mm.
And even here, PICI is called 45 minutes from here in a car. It's called Pinci because people were. I make up stories. I call it historical fiction. Why? I try to find out why do they call it Pinci and we call it Pici. And so I asked. My favorite thing is going into bars over where they call it Pinci and talk to the old guys and see what they can tell me about it. And I couldn't find anything on the internet, in any of my books or anything. So I made up a story.
I
I
love
call
it.
it I call it historical fiction. And so my idea was this. I said, some guy from Montalcino, where they call it Pinci, came over to have a few days with friends or family here in Montepulciano. Now, in a car, it's 45 minutes now, but in the old days, it was a couple of days on the horse. He came over, he had the local pasta, he went back home and they said, what did you eat there? Well, in the meantime, it was a rainstorm and he's riding his horse. He got a cold. He got to Montalcino and he goes, we had peachy.
Y'all
And
can't
so
see it, but she plugged her nose.
I think it's a hilarious made up story. But when I told, we have an adopted grandpa here. I don't know if you met him when you were here. He often
No.
would come for the classes, the shoemaker in Montepulciano. And I told that idea to him. He goes, you know what? I think you're right. So I'm valid. I'm totally validated. But it's
Absolutely.
amazing because if you go to Naples or you go to Sicily, where I just was, you go up north to Piemonte, they're eating completely different things, completely different and
That's
wonderful,
wonderful.
amazing. It's like 20 little countries in one. And so I still do this. Yeah, I still bring the groups around and it's great fun for me and I'll never be skinny. I'm just
Oh,
going to
who
stay.
cares?
Yeah. Right.
Who cares? You're eating fabulous food and you're learning about the ingredients that are in the area, the recipes that are in the area, the culture that's in the area, and you're taking groups there and you're teaching them about it and you're writing cookbooks about
Yeah.
for the food in those different regions. How many cookbooks do you have out now?
17.
Oh, just 17. That's it.
I know. Sometimes I can't believe it, but I'm 90 years old.
You are not.
Getting there, I hope.
We all hope we get there, right? No, you're not even close to that. But do you have a favorite?
Of my cookbooks, well, I have different favorites for different reasons. I think the next to the last one that is called Cucina Povera is about the local food of Tuscany and how there are lots of interviews with older people who lived through hard times and lived through the war and post-war, also pre-war, World War II, I'm talking about, and how a lot of times they didn't have anything to eat. And so I talked to them and how did you manage? How did your family get through this? And the stories in some cases were just heartbreaking because they were hungry, or sometimes they'd start to describe something that they ate. And I remember this one darling woman, peas. They ate peas all the time. They had fresh peas, they had dried peas, and they had peas, and they had peas. And so when she was talking about it, though, she'd light up. She would light up. She'd say, we had peas. And she made me this egg with peas. And, I mean, it was just really, really kind of amazing to see the resilience of these people, really super resilient. And a lot of them went on to do better things. Like one of them in particular was a teacher, and she was teaching young women in the countryside how to do things like, it was part of the Marshall Plan, actually, how to preserve food so it would be healthy. They would have all of the seasonal vegetables of the summer, and maybe they would put them in jars and can them, but there's ways to do that, of course. And so she got into that kind of teaching of the young women. And these things are obviously developed now into more sanitary kinds of things, but it probably saved a lot of lives too. Yeah.
Sure, because they had food in the winter because they knew how to preserve it.
Yeah.
So when you were in California, you started doing this, right?
Yeah, I started, well, it's been 30 years. I guess it was around 92. And I had a partner at the time, a business partner, who was working with a winery in Tuscany. And we just kind of got together and he said, why don't you help me? You can help promote it in the US, bring the people over, and we'll do these tours and visit artisans and producers of the traditional products. In the beginning, it was chefs and people who were, chefs working in an Italian restaurant who maybe just needed to come see the original ingredient here, like a balsamic vinegar or even olive oil or just some simple things like that, to really go back. I mean, you see on menus, you see people writing about a Tuscan salsa that you dip your bread in. Well, it doesn't exist in Tuscany, and so we were kind of hoping to educate people, in that way. But the problem was chefs are either working all the time, or if they're not working, they don't have any money to come over. So we ended up turning it into something for food lovers and home cooks, and people who just wanted to expand their knowledge of Italian food and wine. And that's what I've continued doing. And it's really fun. So I just got back from Sicily, and the food, it just blows your mind. When my last book was on Sicily, I wrote the book, and then I give it to Johnny Johns to read before I send it to the publisher, because he's not a cook, and he'll read it and he'll say, well, I don't know what you mean by this. Well, he's got that Kentucky accent too. He speaks Kentuckian.
That's right.
And so he's like, I don't get what you mean. So it helps me, clarify things. Both of us, when I finished writing it and when he finished reading it, and I'm right now, as I'm talking about it, our mouths are watering.
Yeah.
Because food is just so big and robust, and the flavors and the people are big and robust, not big in the size, but they're just full of character and love for their food. It's amazing. So
Awesome.
I love my job.
Yeah, I mean, you're living the dream. You really are, and you have been for 30 years, which is wow, so exciting. So how many years did you continue to bring people over from the States? And then we're going to get into how you settled where you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for 8 or 9 years, I was commuting, you could say.
Commuting to Italy.
Exactly. But I also, I had other things going on back in California, my cooking school and writing and so forth. To be perfectly honest, I didn't sit around dreaming of coming, because my husband was working. He worked for Patagonia at the time, and then things just changed a little bit, and we adopted our daughter. And when she would travel with me the first years that she, before it was time to go to school. But then I said, you know what? She's going to have to stop. I'm going to have to stop going to Italy, because I'm not going to leave her, because I would come for, 6 to 8 weeks at a time with her. So I'm just going to stop going to Italy. Got this kind of sad face, and he's just a sweet guy. You met him. He doesn't like me to be sad. He goes, why don't we move over there? I'm like, okay, let's go.
That was it.
We didn't sit around dreaming of it. And when people say this, you're living the dream, I mean, I didn't dream of it, but it has been dreamy. It has been dreamy. And I'm really happy, so happy to be here for so many reasons. We have dual citizenship now too. So it's a sense of security, and, it's a good life here. And I've taken on a lot in this time. I took on being an innkeeper, because we have a farm with a farmhouse and apartments and rooms. And then I also decided to certify organic, because we have 800 olive trees, and we make a wonderful olive oil, which I've just written I think it was my 85th order for, because we just harvested and I'm shipping it out now. And then this traveling thing that I do, and my daughter, all of that, it's taking on a lot. And it hasn't been maybe till now, when she's 25 and she's getting more established, that I have been able to like take a deep breath and think about what I've done. I was kind of blushing when you introduced me, but I was like, wow, okay, I did do a few things, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
Not all the time, Mary Kay, you can't be happy all the time, but
No.
I just feel like it's been a good life with challenges. COVID was a challenge. Okay.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Because you have the inn, it's a B&B, right? Or is it, or do people stay there for long periods?
2-night minimum. And sometimes people stay longer, because there are apartments too, where you can cook for yourself, go in my garden and pick all the stuff and come in and cook. You helped me pick things when you were here.
I did.
Those zucchini flowers and sage leaves, and
Yeah. Oh, You know, I look back on my trip to Italy and there are moments that make me sigh with contentment and peace and just take that deep breath and being on your property, spending time with you, cooking with you, all of those things were they were amazing.
You're so
And
sweet.
they're part of what gives me that moment of, oh, so lovely. And, you know, I cannot wait till I come back. I look forward to that
You will.
immensely.
You will. You know, before we started recording, we were talking about what you've been doing, which is amazing.
Thank you.
And I said to you, I see that this feeds you. You get nutrition from it.
Yeah.
And I get nutrition from what I do too. And it's such a rewarding thing. I mean, it's not just about sauteing some onions. It's about it's lifestyle. It's caring about what you put in your body when you eat. It's all of those things. But I don't know. Uh, I said I'm taking the orders for the olive oil right now, and so a lot of people write to me, and they say similar things that you say, which again I get nutrition from. They send me pictures from 12 years ago, from 15 years ago, and it's just so sweet that I try to keep them still in my life too. Facebook's been good for that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just so happy that there's a little thought of me in your life too. That makes me so happy. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I use I have like 10,000 pictures because I love photography. Yeah, I know it's kind of her eyes are bugging out, y'all. I do. And I recently made some bookmarks with the QR code to sign up for my weekly email because my email comes out every Monday morning. It's meant to be inspirational. It's got a link to the most recent episode of the podcast, as well as a beautiful image and a quote. And when I was pulling the images for this, uh, there were a lot from Italy, but there were several specifically from our time together when I was in your cooking class. And it was the arrangement of fresh basil, tomatoes, eggs, like, and you weren't arranging them intentionally in a beautiful way, but they were absolutely beautiful. And I have an image of your dog sitting in front of the geranium and the mountain in the background. And I have an image of our pasta that we made, and an image of the tool that Johnny was working with for some art project that he was doing. I don't even know what it was, but it was with a sewing machine, and it was awesome. And I use those images because they're beautiful. They really are.
I don't necessarily arrange things as you said, but I do remember when I was young and single, and I was single for a really long time. Someone said to me, "Don't wait for someone to bring you flowers. Get your own friggin' flowers and put them in a vase." And I took that to heart. Don't wait for someone to make a special meal. Make it for yourself. Pour yourself a glass of wine in a glass. Don't just drink it out of the bottle,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And so I got into the habit of doing that. And then and it's so true. I mean, I have a wonderful family and husband, but I have to take care of myself a little bit too. And I think that is essential and not hard to do and gives me a lot of pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think you picked up on that. But then also I've just got these wonderful ingredients that I can grab and stick in a glass.
You do. And I love what you said about buy yourself flowers. When I first got divorced, I decided that I was always going to have something beautiful in my home. And I always bought myself fresh flowers and had them on my dining room table. Always.
It's easy.
Yes.
It's easy, but we don't do it for some reason. Girls, get out there and do it.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I also love the fact that you are pouring into yourself, because I think as women, we tend to pour into everybody else, take care of everybody else's needs, and sometimes at our own detriment.
I still do that. I
Yeah,
still
I know.
do, but
I know.
it's just, I wouldn't be happy if I didn't.
I think that I was talking with someone the other day about the difference between being of service to others and being a sacrifice of your own self in doing so. And so I think there's that balance of we absolutely want to take care of others. We want to nurture, we're nurturers by nature. And so we tend to do that and do it a lot. And for me, like you, it brings me great joy. I also have found that because I've been a single mom for 15 years, if I don't fill up my cup, if I don't take time for myself, there's nothing left to give to my
Yeah.
kids and to give to my work and to give to other things. And I had a tendency to focus solely on that and on serving others, and then not taking the time to nurture myself. And unfortunately, it really took getting in this accident that I was in to make me assess, that treadmill that I was on, that constant movement, always busy, striving for the next thing. And now I can honestly say I love resting in the pause, that space between things. And I love being able to fill up my cup in ways that are nourishing for me. So it could be a walk in nature. It could be sitting and listening to the wind in the leaves. It could be sitting in front of a fire in cozy clothes, reading a book and sipping tea. It could be any variety of things, but the things that nourish my soul are just as important as nourishing others. And I think that's an essential part of it.
I agree. And I think the thing that rings true for me and reminds me frequently is when you get on an airplane and they say, you're not going to be able to help anyone if you don't put your mask on first.
Yep.
The oxygen mask. You put that on and then you can help everyone.
Yep. Yep. I
And
just
I think
finished I'm sorry?
no, I think that summarizes it for me. But
Absolutely.
I like your glass. I like your glass of
Well,
wine.
it's got to be with wine. Absolutely. I may not give my toddler wine, although I don't have a toddler anymore, but yeah. It's interesting. I just finished my manuscript for my book, You Are a Queen of Moxie, a roadmap to stepping into joy and living your authentic life. So excited about it. I literally just finished it last week. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting. It's now it's the next step of getting it published. But I literally wrote in there that the reason the flight attendants tell you to put your mask on first is because if you go to put your child's mask on first, you will both literally die before you can do that, because you'll run out of oxygen before you can do it. So you'll both perish if you don't take care of yourself first.
Exactly.
What a mind-blowing concept.
Yeah. Yeah. You heard the same thing I did.
I did. Well, and you hear it and you kind of go, yeah, whatever. But when you actually read about why they say that, it is this epiphany moment of it's important to take care of yourself too. It really is.
Mhm.
So I want to move into, you were doing these tours, you were writing these cookbooks. Your daughter got to an age where you didn't want to leave her for that long. And Johnny John said, okay, we'll move. So
Yeah.
you moved to Italy. And what was that like coming from California across the globe?
Well, it 21 years ago, it was a lot easier than it would be now, I have to say. Because Italy has caught up with, and the bureaucracy has gotten thicker and denser. It's different, but we bought a farm, and because I had already been working in the area that we live in now. I had some people, I had connections and friends, and then we put our daughter in school, which was, the real turning point for inserting ourselves into the society, because, you're thrown in with all the parents. And I spoke enough Italian to buy a house, to do a real estate deal. I spoke enough Italian to get healthcare for us and insurance and start doing the business. But, this was early 2001, and we were doing okay. And then 9/11 happened, and it was a screeching halt for us. And we had a mortgage to pay and all the other stuff too. And so, there's been a lot of bumps like this along the 21 years. And that was the first one where I just said, how can we adjust this and make it work? And so at the time, most of my clients were coming from the States, because that's where I had my connections. People knew who I was to a certain extent. And that they all stopped coming at 9/11. So, well, we'll work on getting an audience in Europe. And it was more about the bed and breakfast aspect, the farm stay. And I started getting people from all over Europe, which, in the end, when the Americans started coming back, it just all blended together and made it better in the long run. Tough years though. And then, there's been all kinds of things that have happened, from the Iceland volcano blowing up and stopping all people coming from on the airplanes, or, just crazy stuff that you can't make up. And now COVID, of course.
Right. I'm sure
Yeah.
COVID was devastating.
It was, but Mary Kay, I couldn't have picked a better place to be isolated.
Yeah.
And I had plenty of work to do. That's the truth.
What did you do during COVID?
I pruned the vineyard. I pruned the olive trees. I, just did as much as I could. My husband helped. He's a little older than me, so I did a lot of it. And I couldn't hire anyone, and I needed to. The one income that we were going to have was from the olives. So, but I loved also the fact that I was out there in the vineyard doing the pruning with podcasts in my ear. If I'd known, I could have had you in my ear.
Well, I
But
didn't start it yet, so.
true. But what a wonderful, talk about slowing down. It really brought me back to the ground. And there's some positive things to be said. That, the sad things, of course, are the people that we lost. Italy was hit very, very hard.
Yeah.
And it's changed a lot here. But on the other hand, it made me kind of just say, I need to integrate things a little bit more and, put that oxygen mask back on.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. We ate well.
That's really good.
That was the goal. Yeah. He got spoiled. He's like, and we had a really nice dinner every night. And then, when business started picking up again, he's like, what you gonna make for dinner? I'm like, go make your own. I'm busy.
That's great. That's great. One of the things that I noticed when I was in Italy 6, 7 years, however many years ago, is that it is a different pace of life. And I'd love for you to talk about the frenetic pace of California and the States, and what it's like to live and breathe and be in that culture in Tuscany. And well, I'm sure I'm not saying it as beautifully as you, Montepulciano.
No, that's perfect.
Oh,
No,
good.
the thing is, it's changing here too. As we get more technology, as we're all more connected globally, and all of the inventions in life, supposedly time-saving things and all that, where we used to say that Italians Italians work to live,
Mhm.
and Americans live to work. So, and this was very true. And I brought that ethic with me, honestly. Had to train myself that in the beginning, everything was closed on Sunday and all families would get together, and we didn't stand a chance to be invited or invite someone because it was the family together. And that's why we adopted our grandpa. He had never married. He was elderly in his 80s, and we just bit by bit we just got him in our family, which was a wonderful thing. He traveled with us. We went to London, we went to California a few times, and he knew all our family over there. It was a wonderful, wonderful. And he was my daughter's grandpa.
Yeah.
It was great. He just died during the COVID thing too, of old age, not really
Oh.
COVID, but COVID didn't help. Anyway, this kind of slow life, he made us hold on to that because he came over every Sunday and we would have a dinner or a lunch usually. And just everything did slow down. And nowadays stores, since it was a law that stores had to close in the middle of the day. So people would go home and have lunch, and they had to all close on Sunday as well. So they go to church. And then the law changed and people had the option of staying open. There's still some stores that close here in the countryside. There's still some of that, but the pace has definitely picked up. But I remember distinctly when we first got here, because I brought a 40-foot container with every book I ever owned because I was afraid to be without English books, and very little furniture because the farmhouse was left furnished for me.
Mhm.
And, just a lot of small knickknacks and sentimental things. I needed to get mixer and blender and things like that because the current's different here. We have 220 volts, not 110. So when I was in California, I would shop all the stores. I would go to Target, I'd go to Costco, go to all those places and try to find the best blender at the best price. It's just what I had to do it. Anyway, I get here, I need a vacuum clean. No, I need a blender. I go to the store, and there's very few stores around us at the time. There was one blender. I bought it. I brought it home and I said, wow, I like that. I like that.
Interesting.
And the only exception was, for irons, because you would go into the store, there'd be one vacuum cleaner to buy, one type of blender to buy, one kind of mixer to buy, and 25 irons.
What?
They love to iron. They love to iron. What can I say? There's all these different irons. I don't know why.
Of all the things, that's probably the one that I would be like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, but you don't have clothes dryers here. You hang things up on the line, and so you do need to iron them. And guess what? Hanging stuff up on the line, I'm like, oh my God, I don't have time. Got to go out and hang it up on the line. After a little bit, it becomes, I get to go out and hang things on the line now. It's just, it's a different perspective. I think for many years before we moved here, I tried to bring it back to California with me, that I would stop for lunch, that I would do these kind of things. And I would do it for a week and then it would disappear. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then the reverse happened, that I brought that work ethic here too. But I've found a middle ground now.
Nice.
I found a middle ground, and it's just about expectations that we put on ourselves, don't you think?
I do. Mhm.
And we think that we have to do everything, and that maybe we can or can't do everything, but I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
guilty as charged. Really am.
Well, I mean, I personally have so much respect for you, and and long to be like you, because the
You don't.
thought of going and living and doing something that brings you so much joy and so much fulfillment, it is such a remarkable thing. And prior to my accident, I was just going.
all the time.
Going, 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 going. And I wasn't happy in my job. I was
No.
doing it because that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to continue moving up the corporate ladder, and I needed to provide for my children and myself. And so I love the fact that you just continue to follow in that path. You found this love of cooking, and you found this love of teaching, and you blended the two of them together. And then you moved, and you made a life for yourself and your family, and continued to expand based on what was around you and what opportunities you had. And I feel like that's so remarkable.
It is also about the opportunities that are around you, but also making those opportunities too, because, for me, my focus became organic, became sustainability, before we were really talking about it, doing all the composting and, trying to grow as many things as I could for us. And obviously I had help, because that's something you just can't do all yourself. But I think that in the long run, you have to make that space. And so I think what we have to ask ourselves, what's the first little tiny step we can take, or the little space we can give ourselves? But for you, it's your glass of wine. For me, it was Sundays. Sundays, I still try to not make it a work day, and to be with my friends, my family, whoever is around me at the time. And a lot of times we have guests that are here on Sunday, so I can, just be a little more relaxed with them. So maybe carving out just some kind of little space like that is what we're saying, isn't it? You said it. Now I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to women to step into joy, to live their authentic lives, to reclaim their moxie, what would that be?
I think you first have to identify what that is. That's not so easy, because we get on this, this race, the guinea pig wheel. What do you call it?
Hamster wheel. Yep.
That's it. Yeah. And, so I think the first thing to do is just step off for a second, just for a minute, if you can, and say, what pleases me? What gives me satisfaction? I mean, it doesn't have to make you happy, because happy is such a vague concept. But, to say, I like growing carrots. And just, even if you just have a windowsill with some carrots that you're tending, it's a place, it's a starting place. And I don't know how to advise somebody, but to love yourself first. Trying to teach that to my daughter too. She's so influenced by Instagram and, all these pictures of people who don't really look like that, and it's like, for her, it's a competition. She thinks she needs to look like that. What? Just step back for a second. I am so glad I grew up when I did. That we didn't judge people by the way they looked. We judged them by the way they acted.
I want to be sensitive to your time. So I really want to say thank you. It's just such a delight to talk with you again. And oh my gosh, I'm just so grateful.
I just appreciate you so much. I'm so pleased to be back in touch with you, and I want to get on your email list too. So I need a QR code, baby.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on the Queens of Moxie podcast. I hope that you found it inspirational and that it helps you to think about how you can step into joy and live your authentic life. And remember, we have a weekly email so that you don't miss any of these episodes. Plus, it starts your Monday out with an inspirational quote and a beautiful image. If you haven't subscribed yet, go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.